It's OTA day. Second Dinner kicks off their intro today by noting that the metagame looks like it's in a very healthy spot based on all the metrics they have on their end, and anecdotally, I'm pretty inclined to agree with them. I will say that we're definitely in a Shang-Chi omnipresent format, but the other 11 cards you can play around that powerful tech card definitely pretty varied, and I've been finding success with lots of different decks, and the metrics on our public trackers are also reflective of the format being pretty varied overall. That in mind, today's over there update is primarily buffs coming to 4 underutilized cards, and then 1 card inside of Destroy that's getting a side grade to make it a little bit worse in that archetype, but potentially better in others. Let's go ahead and dive on into that one first, shall we? Our first change this week is Hulkbuster going from a 3-5 down to a 2-3. Second Dinner had noted earlier this week in a Team Answers response that the Destroy archetype was currently the best performing archetype in the existing metagame, and even in the previous metagame before that Blob nerf, it was the second best performing deck behind Blob. Second Dinner then goes on to note that in their metrics, the best performing aspect of a lot of the Destroy decks was the Deadpool package, and Hulkbuster is likely a large part of that. If you attach Hulkbuster to a Deadpool and then blow it up even just a single time, suddenly you have 12 points worth of stats, and if you blow it up a second time, it gets a whopping 24 that scales up even more if you can blow it away a third time. This change to Hulkbuster will make it so that doubling happens a little bit more slowly, but can still be powerful, and because Hulkbuster is getting a more efficient energy rate, Second Dinner goes on to talk about how they think it's possible for this card to fit more efficiently into other non-Destroy archetypes, making this very likely a side grade as opposed to a strict nerf. Overall, I think this is a really clever change for a first attempt at maybe reining in the Destroy deck a little bit. I don't think it makes the deck unplayable by any means, but it does take their highest rolls and brings them back down to earth a little bit to hopefully give other decks a better chance of keeping up with them without having to solely rely on tech cards like Shadow King and Shang-Chi. I think I'm also inclined to agree with the assessment that Hulkbuster at 2 energy has the potential to be better in other decks like Movement, and perhaps even as a Werewolf by Night enabler, since it could give us an on reveal effect into a lane that's otherwise full that you then jump your dog into. Our next change this week is to Luke Cage. He is being changed from a 2-3 up to a 3-4, but his ongoing effect is going back to his original text box of stopping your cards everywhere from having their power be reduced. Second Dinner kicks things off by offering us a history lesson here that Luke Cage as a 2 energy global effect was pretty omnipresent last year because the opportunity cost of playing him on 2 was pretty low overall, especially in relation to the many cards in the format such as High Evolutionary and Man Thing and various others that he would just completely shut down. Since they changed him to a localized effect at that time, they've been following his progress, but even in decks like Cerebro 3, he was really struggling to perform. So they are moving him up the cost to 3 so he can have that global effect like they want, but also have more consideration inside of deck building, because that 3 energy slot on the curve is really where decks want to start advancing their own game plan. So there's a much larger opportunity cost if you want to deploy an anti-tech card like Luke Cage's effect is. Personally, I'm really glad to see this change happen for Luke Cage. It's exactly the change myself and many others had been asking for. Cost increase with his effect going back to global. Personally, I'm really looking forward to getting to play the Lizard Luke Cage Typhoid Mary package that I've been playing in a variety of decks before they nerfed him last year, and this will definitely make him a relevant tech card in the metagame once again. Our next buff this week is one that many players, myself included, have been asking for some time, and that is Spider-Man 2099 is finally getting some love. He is going from a 4-6 up to a 5-9. Second Dinner notes that 2099 has been a below average card for a while, but never quite one of the worst. That being said, they're considering more significant adjustments to the card, but they wanted to start with a simple stat change to see if that would potentially be enough to increase his viability. Second Dinner goes on to note that similar to the Hercules buff in the last Over There update, they'd really like to make some of these bigger move cards viable, and this first stat line change here is to try and figure out what numbers might make that possible. As for my thoughts on this change, to set an incredibly low bar, I think the 5'9" stat line is almost assuredly better than his previous 4'6". The kind of thought that goes through my mind when analyzing this effect is, okay, how much power does 2099 actually need to blow up to be efficient in the realm of a 5 energy play? You know, other big 5 energy statistics like Gamora offer 12 points of power, so Spider-Man 2099 blows up something 4 or more, he's likely above rate while also being able to dodge Shang-Chi, which is pretty common. Maybe this card is real. Definitely excited to play some games with my sweet variant and find out either way. Our next buff this week is a very minor one. Heimdall is going from a 6'8 up to a 6'9. Second Dinner had mentioned in the previous update they were going to be evaluating most of the 6 drops in the game and make further adjustments when they had buffed the Destroyer up to 16, and Heimdall is the next card in that evaluation. Second Dinner notes that when Heimdall was initially created, it was given 8 points of power to allow it to duck Shang-Chi, but Shang-Chi now destroying 10 plus power cards gives them a little bit of breathing room to add an extra stat line on to Heimdall here while still allowing him to duck that powerful opposing tech card. Perhaps there's a world where we're curving Spider-Man 2099 on 5 into Heimdall on 6. That's 18 points worth of power between the two, and 2099 kills something, and maybe you slide a dagger or a vulture around the board as well. Maybe that's enough to keep up. I'd like to think we're living in a world where it might be. I'm definitely going to try and find out either way. Finally, we close on a change that I think perhaps has the most potential to be impactful from today's over-the-air update. Ghost is getting a sizable glow up from a 1-2 to a 3-5, while retaining her ongoing effect, your cards are always revealed last. Second Dinner starts off by noting that Ghost has had a pretty similar path to Spider-Man 2099, i.e. she's always been a pretty mediocre card, but not necessarily one of the worst in the game, and they're going to start in a similar manner simply by adjusting her stat line before they consider a larger rework to see if that can bring her to relevancy. I say this change is potentially the most concerning from our over-the-air update today because of the impact it has around a card I've talked about a lot, and that's Shang-Chi. Specifically, what I would argue is the best Shang-Chi / tech card deck right now is the Sarah control deck that's playing things like Enchantress and Shadow King and Shang and even Grandmaster sometimes to reuse those effects, and that archetype really loves making sure it can go second. With Ghost being an efficient stat line, that deck is going to be able to almost always go second, except when Ghost is either removed or both players have Ghost and then they negate each other, giving it another axis that will make it difficult and likely pretty frustrating to play into if you're trying to do anything remotely proactive. In short, I think this Ghost change is going to accomplish Second Dinner's goal of making her a relevant and playable card, but I also wonder at the same time, is her being a relevant and playable card in decks like Sarah Control actually a net positive for the format, or is it just going to take what's arguably currently the best deck and push it to be a little bit better than it already is? As always, I'd love to know your thoughts on these OTA changes in the comments down below and what you're most looking forward to brewing with. If you enjoyed my musing on that topic, be sure to snap that like button, and hopefully we'll see you back again tomorrow for a deck highlight featuring some of these freshly updated Marvel Snap cards.